Welcome back to City Skylines with Grand Manipulation Cities. My name's Ben Ross and I'm an urban geographer. Today, in this first part, I will be answering a question from a YouTube commenter before we going on to today's session, which is using the rich data sets I've got available, particularly the transit system, Mr. Traffic Flow, and most likely as soon as I remember where it is, the traffic routes. Where are they all coming from? As you can see right here. And technically this traffic data question will answer the YouTuber commenter's question on why is the city around cars and buses so much rather than cycling. Note the colour, private vehicles. Note where they're coming from, primarily technically from Kent Heights, but also intercity traffic as well, and that becomes real prevalent as tourism and leisure starts taking off. So the question was, why is the city with a focus on cars and buses and not using low volume streets, and that for cycling? Well, the technical answer is the city is not built around cars, otherwise I'll be using big giant 6 and 12 lane roads as seen over here, although that doesn't mean they will get used later on for arterials when I'm not using motorways. But the city's not focusing on cars. As for buses, this is because this is the first city I'm doing that is trying a bus rapid transit system rather than the typical method I use, which, although it will come in later, metro rail, light rail, aka trams, and heavy rail. Although that said, with heavy rail, it's starting to be rolled out. In this case, I usually either do heavy rail or monorail, although sometimes I can use both, but heavy rail has been rolled out. So the city isn't focused on cars per se. Yes, there might seem a lot of cars in this young city as we're dealing with a lot of intercity traffic at the moment. Locally, for short trips, it's usually active modes or transit, and is in the Leighton cities part, I'm trying a bus rapid transit system for the first time, hence the focus on buses. You will find once I start developing the Monaco City Centre, the focus will start shifting over more to metro rail and light rail. As for low volume streets that they are actually used predominantly most of the time. I don't, unlike other YouTubers who have a tendency to use 4 and 6 lane roads, I have a tendency to use the low volume roads the most, such as the Dutch roadway, which is, I'm also using the UK road set as well, which are smaller but handle the same amount as traffic capacity. So I'm using the UK, this one the most. There it is there. Backed up with others such that's found on the NEX and from the fellow asset builder Urbanist. So low volume roads are actually used by default. In fact, if I drop down to one, you can see these are real low volume roads, and if there are buses running on them, they're feeder buses, so they're the only the maximum you'll see on them is the 70 seaters. You won't see the big 135 bendy boys running down these roads. So low volume is used outside of the arterials. If traffic does start picking up, I'll be looking at how to get it calmed down and moved elsewhere. The other one was, why don't I use cycleways, cycling infrastructure with my arterials like this one? Well, in this case, the cycling infrastructure is right next door between the arterial road and the busway, so that already answers that question. It's right here, and you would have heard in my busway videos, the amount of traffic it picks up. For the rest of it, it just comes down to road design. I've got, if I come over to where I've laid it all out, all the roads that are used for cycling, the game per se usually gives you a choice: green street or one with a cycle lane. And cycle lane on a 6-lane road is a bit suicidal without doing some separation, such as if I go up here, which is fully separated out. So it just depends on what I'm wanting to achieve. Most arterials, there's either a cycleway nearby, like you saw earlier, which I'll be using these roads, or the fact they just have grade side separated cycle lane infrastructure in place already. From time to time I will use this one, which is there's a promenade, so cars come off it, and that's accessible to pedestrians, cyclists and emergency vehicles only, so I can use that one. That will be found more in Monaco city centre, which is going to be a real people-based car-free city. Over here you also have, basically, they are technically, you're sharing, in some cases, sharing the road, so bicycles share the centre. Or, like the one here, you've got the pedestrian. There's no cars on them, so these are basically pedestrian walls. So there's no cars on them anyway, so it's pedestrians or cyclists. Something else to note is the speed limits set. So most cycling infrastructure, if I come down to it, have really low speed limits set. 50k in this case, and I can use props to make up a separated cycleway. For the 2-lane roads, it's actually 30. And in the shared space ones, the speed limit is, and we'll go to the traffic manager, 30 again. So good old TMP tells me what the speed limits are. You can see most of these roads actually have low speed limits. 10 for the service vehicles, so they're restricted to 10. 50, 30 again, 50, 50 but it's separated, 50 again. 60, hence why the 6-lane cycle lanes are never built. If you're wondering why there's 140 in the middle of nowhere, that's because the train tunnel down to Kent Heights is running underneath. Again, 30, 60, but grade separated, 30, 10. So the speed limits in most cases are low by default. They're set to European Union standards, and where the high speed limits are used, higher speed limits, it's either separated out, or if it's not, I just have to come in and do a little bit of an intervention here, just using props to make it look. So that's how the question of car focused cycling and that is all addressed, especially with arterial roads as well as the general urban area. So I hope that answers your question there. And one thing I can also do, come down, what can I ban? Bye-bye cars, bye-bye buses, bye-bye taxis. Now if there's commercial coming down, the service vehicles are going to remain. You're going to remain your utility vehicles, so your recycling, and you're going to remain your emergency services. So that's how your pedestrian malls run. So the options are there to do what I need to, as I need to make it people focused. So hopefully that answers that question. Second part, let's look at the data.